Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast, which helps entrepreneurs generate more impact, wealth, and success, attract others for all the right reasons, and become a smart connector, the architect of your amazing business and life. This podcast is sponsored by Virtual Non-Execs, the world's #1 peer-to-peer board advisor community, which connects thousands of investors, entrepreneurs, and advisors globally. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the Smart Connector podcast. I've got a wonderful guest for you, as ever, today, Bianna Espinal. Welcome, Bianna.
Hello, Jane. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome, and it's great to have you here. Now, Bianna is a client of mine, and I have to say that she has been so inspirational. She is a absolutely amazing lady, and she's got a fantastic story. But before we get into that, just a little bit of background. Who is Bianna? So she has 2 decades of experience in healthcare. That's her background. She's a dentist. That was how you qualified, although she went on to do all sorts of other things, which you will hear about. She really believes in achieving transformational results for her clients ethically, and so to help them become more aligned with their businesses and lives and really achieve fulfillment. She's a passionate wealth creator. People and patient-centric care is something that she's also incredibly passionate about. She's an entrepreneur and founder of Plentiful Coaching. So it's really great to have you here, Bianna. And before we get into it, let's just talk about how we met and what we did together, Bianna. So over to you. Tell the audience how it all happened.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you, Jane. So we met before I left my previous role. Remember, you came in to help us with some strategic work that we had to do. And from day one, I was very impressed with all your experience, with everything that you have helped your clients accomplish. And I was inside myself, I was in my own little journey, but obviously you didn't know that at the time. And so then when the time came that I decided to change my role, my career, then I reached out and I asked for a little bit of help because I found myself in a time and a place where I didn't know where to go. That's the honest truth. I knew I needed a change. I knew that they couldn't continue because I was in my role doing the same job for 16 years. And although I loved it, although I really enjoyed it, I felt that I came to a point in my career where I needed more of a challenge. And that's where I reached out, and we had a fantastic year where we worked together hard and led to where I am today.
Yeah, that's amazing, Bianna. So when you left your job, it was quite a high-flying job, wasn't it? Because you were working for a big dental practice in a very senior management position, weren't you? So you had a lot of responsibility. You'd been doing amazing things in that role. You're working very closely with the chief executive. But of course, corporate life is very different to entrepreneurship, isn't it? And what did you feel as though the challenges were for you personally when you were thinking about making that leap?
I think I wanted to continue to do something that was impactful. I wanted to ensure that all the experience that I had, all the value that I added over the years in that particular business was something that I could continue to do for other businesses. I think for me, it was important to continue to learn, to continue to improve myself, and with that, bring that into other ventures. And I felt that is what was lacking. Don't get me wrong, I loved my job and I loved the people that I work with. They're very talented, very giving, people that come to work every day to do a really good job. However, it gets to a point in somebody's career where you're thinking, I need a change, I need a fresh start somewhere else. And that is where the conflict on the inside comes, because you don't want to leave that, but then you also know that a change needs to come in your life because perhaps you don't see yourself doing the same for the next 10, 20 years again. And I think that's where the things are starting to evolve and change.
Yes, and I think you had got really as far as you could go in terms of your career, and it was a very senior role, so there was no problem there. But in terms of actually climbing the career ladder, really the greatest opportunity I felt, and I think you felt this as well, was actually taking your experience and skill set
Mm.
to the open market and actually offering those amazing skills and experience to new clients so that you could work with more businesses. That was a very important part of it for you, wasn't it, Bianna?
It was, and I think you really helped define, because although I had all of these skills, it was how do we narrow down an area where we can be impactful? Where is it that we're going to position ourselves with that message? Go
Mhm.
to market strategy. That took a while. And I remember the conversations that we had where you had to sometimes sit me down and say, hang on a minute, this is what I'm trying to do. Because at times it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. And I know that we took baby steps every day, but we made progress. We made progress, and sometimes some of these steps were challenging. However, we both sat down and we both had to have honest conversations sometimes. And those honest conversations led to actually finding out what was that passion that I was looking for. What was that next step of my career that I was really comfortable and was really going to give me the inspiration to be able to help other businesses.
Yes, because I think the thing about corporate is that you really have acquired quite a generalist skill set, and it's a very good skill set, but that is what's required in corporate life, right? So when you step outside that, it's quite helpful to go from generalist to specialist because then people actually know what they're coming to you for. And that was very much the leap that we had to make, wasn't it, in terms of defining exactly not just what you could do, because you could do a lot of things, but
Yeah.
actually where you were going to make the most impact and what was going to bring the most value to your clients, but also be really inspirational and fulfilling for you. All of those things matter, don't they, Bianna?
They do, and we saw a gap in the market because knowing what we knew from healthcare in general, specifically, or dentistry, we knew that there was a lack of training when it comes to leadership. We
Mm.
went through the process of understanding the burnout, understanding what the challenges that healthcare faces in having to lead, which having to deal with roles that have a lot of responsibility, and where do you find that fuel to allow you to carry on day to day.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So now we're obviously further on. So tell us what has actually happened to your business over that time? How has it evolved and where are you right now?
We managed to go through the strategy of what we needed to build. I had to go back and sit down and work out who was my audience, who were those avatars that I was trying to target. I managed to get on with my website. I have a very active network on LinkedIn. And I also am managing to go to clients that need my help, and they need different type of support with their businesses. And it's very good because you can see the difference that you can make. We're reaching out and we're working with different needs and different gaps in the market, and it's actually a very fulfilling job when you know that you are able to make a difference on different businesses. And some entrepreneurs, they are at different stages in their career. Some of them, they perhaps are clinicians that they need to go ahead and that they want to buy a new business, but they don't know how to start. They
Yeah.
don't know anything about recruitment, compliance, marketing, and that's where we come in and we support them. Or you have the typical clinician who already owns a business. However, they perhaps want to expand that business, or they want to drop out a clinical day, but because perhaps they want to enjoy more the teaching, or they want to work more on the business. And we managed to create that space through meaningful conversations, through self search, and create that space for them to be able to really m- manage to see their vision. What do they want for their business? And allow that space for them to be able to draw down that strategy. That it might be that they want to diversify their assets, it might be that they want to buy another business. So how do we crystallize that time for them to be able to move on to the next stage? And that is what's the kind of cases that we're working with.
Yeah, that's amazing, Bianna. And the interesting thing is that really it's not like you did a pivot and you suddenly went into something new. Essentially, all the skills and experience that you'd built up throughout those, more than a decade of working in a senior leadership position in healthcare, all of those skills and all of that experience you are now just, you are able to turn around and offer it to your existing clients. The difference being that really you were, now you're working with multiple clients, and before you were just really working very closely with the chief executive of this quite a large business, really. So all of those issues that came up when you were supporting him, now they're coming up with your clients, and you've seen it all before, right? It's not like you're suddenly trying to, oh, that, yeah, that's an interesting problem. So I think that's the thing that I really love about working with professionals like you who have made that transition, because you already understood business, you
Yeah.
already understood your industry, you already understood how to support very senior people and business owners, and in your, particularly in your healthcare career. So really, it was just a question of packaging that up and actually bringing it to the open market in a way that made sense. And I think you did that so brilliantly, Bianna. And as I said, I'm just thrilled to bits to have you here and to bring your story to my audience. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you,
And
Jane. We always have the conversation, sorry, but I feel that I wouldn't have done it without you. That's really how, the truth, I have to say.
oh, well, thank you so much. And of course, that means a lot. I think anybody who provides, coaching, consulting services, essentially underneath it all, we are people who love to help, and we love to make a difference, and we love to get results for other people and put good into the world, right? So I think that was also something that we saw in each other. I've been very privileged, to have those people in my business, because I think like attracts like, right? And I think that is one of the things that comes also from being able to kind of communicate very well in terms of what you do, being very clear about who you're for, who you're not for, all of that stuff that we went through together. Because what then happens is the right people start coming to you, and the wrong ones just pass you by. And I mean, that couldn't be a better result, really, for people like us, because we
Yeah.
want to work with those good people with strong values and integrity. So, yeah, it was great. Ah, I see there's lots of people tuning in. So that's great, Bianna. Okay, so let's get on to your story. So I promised the listeners and viewers that it was going to be inspirational, and it certainly is. I know it already, but now it's your turn to bring it to them. So, Bianna, tell us where it all started. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Dominican Republic. This goes back about 50 odd years ago. I have to say I was very fortunate because I had parents, very loving, very caring parents that worked really hard. So my family had a poultry business. And from very early, on my journey, I would see my mom waking up very early, and I would see, both of my parents just trying to build something to be able to leave a legacy for their children and to allow us to have the education and the lifestyle that we needed at the time. And so a friend of mine said something a few years ago, and I kind of never understood it. He said to me, I've looked at the statistics, and you are very lucky that you managed to survive in Dominican Republic up to the age of 25, 27.
Wow.
And I never understood that. And I thought he's exaggerating because it's not a dangerous place. It's not a place where, people are around just with guns or anything like that. But then has some, statistics around the world start creeping in. You think actually I was lucky
Oh,
that I
really?
managed to survive just in road accidents. I didn't realize that Dominican Republic is quite high on the list for motorcycle and road accidents. And sometimes you don't see that risk. So I had the opportunity to get an education. I think those strong values were instilled in us from very young age. When you're trying to escape poverty and you're trying to better your life, education is a tool, is definitely something that you have to work hard. And my parents worked really hard, and they always said, anything that you have today, a house, money, it can go. And when you live in a place like Dominican Republic, you can really see that, because you may have a house and it doesn't matter what kind of house, it might be wiped off by a natural disaster. That is, we live with that in the hurricane season all the time. And my parents used to say the only thing that you have is your education. is the only thing that you can take with you anywhere you go. And
Yeah.
oh boy, Jane, I understood that very early on.
Well, it's true, it's true, and I used to say to my children, "Nobody can ever take your education away from you." They can't, it's the one thing they can't take away from you, right?
So I did dentistry back in the Dominican Republic, and that's where also I started to study English. So that's what's kind of the core part of my education. Then the opportunity came to leave the country, and I moved to the United States. That's where I met my husband and the father of my children. And life is completely different there because although there are a lot of opportunities, you also have the immigration status that you have to, to fight through. Through. I lived in America for 3 years where I tried to perfect my English. I understood the dental market in America and how it works and the different skill sets that is available and how a team dynamic work within a dental practice, within a dental setting in the US. I also learned that the dentistry practice in the US is very different from perhaps Dominican Republic. Then at that point, an opportunity came to emigrate to Spain. Then I moved from America into Spain. So obviously Europe was a completely different environment. I had the opportunity to work in dentistry there, not as a dentist, but within the dental environment. Because as you know, we are a heavily regulated industry when it comes to exam boards and so on. So that's country number two. Again, I stayed there for a few years, 2, 3 years. I think changing from America to Europe, it was a big shock because things are completely different. And, whether it's lifestyle, opportunities, and so on. Then in Spain, I did various jobs within dental practices and so on. And the way that dentistry is practiced there is, again, completely different to the US. So then again, another opportunity came to move to come to England. And I don't know if I told you this about my story, but I came here originally, it was only temporary. I was not meant to stay here for, I've been here now for nearly 20 years. But I think, whether it's fate or God, they had a different plans for me because I remember I wanted to work here as a hygienist about 20 years ago. And I packed everything on a car, took the Eurotunnel, came into the country on a Friday and had an interview on a Monday. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to work for 6 months in the UK. I'm going to earn tons of money and I'm going to go back to Spain and, carry on. However, that was not the case. When I arrived, I felt very ill on a Sunday. It was the day before. I was supposed to have this interview on a Monday. And the doctor said to me, you need to really rest. You need to look after yourself. You need to be able to just take it easy because, you should be hospitalized really, but will allow you to go home and rest, but you should not be working. So I find myself in a situation, I can't go back to Spain. I'm here without a job.
Oh,
What do I do now? And I had a newborn baby at the time. My daughter was 40 odd days old, you know. So I'm very lucky that at the time I had the support of my family who
mhm.
supported me until my health got better in that particular time of my life. They supported me with the basics, accommodation and to sustain myself and so on until I was well enough to actually get a job. So that period of my life I will never forget because again, family values and the support comes into place when you need it the most.
Oh, yeah. Could I just ask you, Bianna, the health issues, what were they caused by? Was that to do with you giving birth or was it to do with burnout? Because I know how hard you worked and, we've talked about that a lot, how challenging your journey was at times. So, obviously being in healthcare, you probably must have taken quite an interest in really what was the root cause of this.
Well, to be honest, Jane, nobody knew what caused it. Nobody knew. It was birth after giving birth. So if you can imagine, I drove on a Friday, I arrived into the UK on a Saturday. On Sunday, I go to supermarket just to get some food. I'm walking in a supermarket and I feel that something is not quite right. And I feel that my trousers are wet. And I'm thinking, what is this? I don't want to go to the toilet. When I look at myself, I had a heavy bleeding episode. And as I continued to walk within 3 or 4 steps, this is now getting worse, getting to my knees. And straight away, they call an ambulance. I had to be taken to hospital. And they never found the cause as to why I had this really heavy episode of bleeding. Obviously, I was very weak. The doctor said to me, you should really be hospitalized for transfusions. So you shouldn't be thinking about going to work. This is serious. They did all the internal scans. They couldn't tell me the reason as to why, I had this. There was nothing, that they could see that was obvious. However, it was for me, it was a time where I thought, okay, I need to stop and I need to rest. I
Mm.
need to listen what the doctors are saying. And I need to take this as an opportunity to be able to sort of work out what I'm going to do. I think Spain was good. Spain opened, new opportunities for me to come to Europe. However, I knew that financially it was not viable. Therefore, that was one of the reasons why I came into the UK. And
Mm.
perhaps they added a stress of the trip, just giving birth, and perhaps,
Yeah.
the situation of wanting a change brought
Mm.
forward all of these. But the actual cause of what happened, why this particular incident happened, it never happened to me ever again after that. But it's one of sometimes when life says to you, you need to stop for a moment, listen to your body, and you need to rest, and you need to make sure that you are in a position to be the best version of yourself. I learned that you need to listen to your body. And I
Oh,
think that
yes.
that time that I had, probably about 6 weeks, 8 weeks of really getting my strength back, it was worth it.
And I think sometimes a lot of us have had health crises. I know I have. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I often talk about that quite openly. So I think it is quite common to go through midlife and have some kind of a health crisis because we all tend to push ourselves. I think people like you and I, we're ambitious people. We tend to want to set the bar high. I think in terms of our quality of life, our children's experience, we want to be good for our families and all the rest of it. But sometimes life has a way of saying, stop, slow down, this is not right, you need to do something different. And I guess that was your moment, really, wasn't it, Bianna?
It was, and what something that also I like to share is that in I was supposed to come to the UK temporarily. I had another child that I left in Spain with my family, with my dad at the time, and it came to a point where I had to decide: do I want to go back to Spain or do I want to come back here? Reunite the family in a sense. So I made that decision, with a very yeah, with a very small job that I had. Work wise, I was not working in dentistry at the time. So my ex-husband, he left his job in Spain, so the family could be reunited. And we saw, the opportunity of work here, after much searching and so on. So, you have to face separation sometimes. And I have faced that a few times in my life where I had to, for the better good of the family, of the career, of the opportunities, you have to separate yourself from your loved ones in order to be able to find, uh, better opportunities.
Yes, and I think that is a very important point actually, Bianna, because, I think immigrants have done this for forever, really, haven't they? It is very hard, for a lot of people to actually contemplate splitting up the family, traveling around, sort of putting down roots in different countries. A lot of people would find that very hard. And I'm sure that you probably found it very hard. But
Certainly.
behind it all was this drive for a better life, for self-improvement, for legacy for your own children, and also presumably to honor, you know, the legacy of your parents in terms of the efforts that they made for you, which is very much a kind of immigrant, kind of sort of ambitious immigrant. It is what people do. And I don't think a lot of people actually realize how hard that is. And it is just incredible, that you did all of those things and, you suffered the pain of separation from your son and, from your family and all of those things. It took a lot of resilience to get through that, didn't it, Brianna?
Yeah, it did. It did. And when we in Spain, I had my own house with a garden, with bedrooms and so on, a comfortable house. We come here to live in London in a shared house where in one bedroom you had myself, my ex-husband, and my two children. My son, who at the time was 3 or 4, and my daughter, who was probably about 4 or 5 months at the time. So is not easy. And then, you need to
No.
work, you need to find childcare, you need to get up early. You have only one transport. So, you have to do a lot on public transport and so on. And so when sometimes people say you don't understand, and it's okay for you. You may see what you see today, but you don't know what people have had to go through.
No.
Because having my son sleeping, on a little couch on the floor or on the floor is something that broke my heart when he had his own house in Spain. However, I knew I had to go through that to be able to establish myself and find the right opportunities and the right people. And that's where things start to turn, because I started to work as a specialist dental nurse in London, started meeting different dentists. And this is where I found the opportunity to work with the large dental business, where I managed then to start to believe that there could be a change of my situation, that I could perhaps have different opportunities and not stay at the level of the supported staff for a dental practice, where I could actually one day maybe be a dentist myself. This is where, you have to be able to take the risk of trying different jobs. And then when the opportunity comes, really embrace it.
Yes. And you found somebody that believed in you as well, didn't you, Bianna? Which is really important. I think sometimes, in all of our journeys, we are never alone, right? We need people to come along who are those important people at a particular time in our lives where they say, do you know what? I actually believe in you. I believe you can really help and you can really make a difference. And you found that, didn't you, in the owner of this big dental practice who we'll keep anonymous for now rather than dragging him into this. But you did found that person who believed in you. And so what happened then?
Well, it's a very interesting story, and is one that I don't think it could have been written without the support and this opportunity. Because I think when you find yourself, at the time, I had a third child, and that was my little one, my daughter. And this is, I remember when I came to work for this dental group, I my daughter was 6 months old. And for me, it was very straightforward. I just need a job that pays enough so I can pay my rent, buy nappies and food. For me, stopping work to sit and study, I couldn't see that as an option, because I had a young family to support.
Yeah.
Then when the owners of the practice realized that I actually was a qualified dentist, the conversation turned into, okay, so what do we do now? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do we do? I just wanted you to know that I'm a dentist, but that's it. That we understand that a bit more than a normal uh, support staff or nurse, but we have to do something with it. And I said, no, hang on a minute, I just need a job. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that you're giving me, to be able to to be here and to learn and to be in the environment. But I haven't studied. I have not opened a book for a number of years. I don't think that I'm able to. But you doubt yourself, Jane.
Of
You
course.
know, you see the task and you see the challenge, and you're thinking, I'm not sure I don't measure up to it. And it was a case of, okay, can you find out when the part one of the exam is and what do you need to do? And oh my goodness, the support, the amount of dentists that came to work with bags of books that believed in me. They said, you should do this, and I have a friend, and I'm introduced you to that
Oh,
person, and you should do that. It was overwhelming. If you think, if nothing else, I'm doing it for me and for them, because they believe in me as well.
oh yeah, isn't that lovely? It is just so nice, isn't it? The power of people to lift you higher in life, that sort of network, those supporters. We all need people like that, don't we?
We do, but that journey is not easy, Jane, because I
No.
remember sitting every Sunday to read these books for 3 months, and I couldn't remember anything the next day. The
Oh, really?
frustration, yeah, the emptiness, the doubt that I won't be able to make it. It's that little voice, inner voice, that who do you think you are? Do you really think that you're gonna? Do you really think it's imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Yes.
And suddenly, one Monday morning, after 3 months, you wake up and you're thinking, I remember what I read yesterday. It's coming back. The baby brain sometimes is real. And that kind of ignites your passion again, and your belief that you're now opening up possibilities. and you're inviting that hope, that you're thinking things might have actually start to turn now. So my dental exam have two parts, part one and part two. Part one is all theory. I passed part one quickly, the first attempt, very straightforward. And I was that kind of boosted my confidence and gave me the belief that I could do that. However, part two was a lot more difficult. It was a practical exam. There was a lot more clinical, content that you have to study. And when part two came, I had to make a decision because I had to study, I had to practice, and I have to continue to work. I have to practice in the practical test to be able to prepare for the exam, because you have four modules and you have to pass all of them at the same time. So again, I had a hard decision. I had to face a hard decision. How can I be, how can I prepare for my exam, continue to work, and look after the family at the same time? My parents were in Spain at the time, so I had to make the hard decision to send my kids away so I could focus on my exam. Initially, that I thought that could take 6 months. However, that went on for 2 years, where I used to visit my children once a month, and I used to have to work here to be able to send them, what they needed for their sustenance. So again, the part two of my exam, I had to sit that exam twice. So the first time I failed, and your confidence get knocked. You think, what did I do wrong? It's so
Yeah.
expensive. Do I want to try again? And what happens if I fail again? That particular part of the exam, the modules, you can take them 4 times. But I met people who were on that journey that they taken the exam 3 times, and the fourth time was their attempt, the last attempt. And I didn't want to be in that position. So you doubt yourself, but I think that gave me the resilience, that gave me the inspiration, that gave me the hope and the power to be able to work harder, to be able to prepare for the exam in a way that I have a really high possibility to increase my pass rate.
Yeah, and, I was just reflecting when you were talking about that, Bianna, that I think you were one of the hardest working mentees that I have ever had in terms of your diligence and your application, because you have trained yourself to be able to study really well. And I can see all of that application. I can only imagine how hard that was when you didn't have your family around you, when you were, separated from your children, whether it was really make or break time, wasn't it for you? I think most people, they do not ever put themselves through anything as challenging as that. And the fact that you did and you passed in the end, didn't you?
I did.
Yep.
And again, was all the
Amazing.
support, there wasn't. And anyone that I would come, if I come to any of the dentists with a question, there wouldn't be a stupid question. They were happy to sit down and go through everything with me. They were happy to give me any tools or any materials, anything that I needed, any feedback in order for me to. But I embraced that feedback. I wanted it. I wanted to know, how can I improve? How can I get better? I was like a sponge. I was always willing to completely, take that on everything on board, to be able to improve myself. And that was something that very earlier on I understood. The only way to make yourself better is to perhaps see things from somebody else's perspective, and perhaps stop and listen to to what they have to say about your work.
Yes.
That's really something that with dentistry really helped me understand.
Yes. Yeah, so you passed your exams, and then let's talk about, you started working very closely alongside the CEO of this very successful dental practice. So it wasn't just one dental practice, he's building a big group, right? So tell us about that work, Bianna. How did that evolve after all of this had happened?
So after I passed my exam, I had the opportunity to work as an NHS dentist. This is a mixed business that work NHS and private. Different opportunities arise to work NHS and private, and at the same time, the business was going through an expansion.
Mhm.
The business was, getting more business, buying more dental practices and so on. And obviously, because of my background, where I had experience in the administration of the business, in the managerial and strategic part of the business, at that point, I had a proposal to actually cut down the dental, clinician work, and spend some time working in the office as an, strategic, with strategic input and so on, and more from a managerial perspective. So that journey continued because the businesses started to grow. So over time, within dentistry, I developed my skill set to be more business focused rather than, obviously, I knew the clinical part, but it was an opportunity that came also at a part in my life where I needed to spend more time at home with the children. So
Mhm.
that was a very good opportunity. It was something that perhaps changed the perspective of my career at the time because again, crossroads. Do I continue as a clinical dentist or do I now go more into the business and start developing something that is more impactful as a business? And yeah, that's where the kind of turning point came where few years ago, I dropped clinical dentistry completely to dedicate myself into actually the business aspect of the dental industry.
Yeah. And so you've got a really broad range of skills and experience. So you've just added to them consistently. So you understand the clinical side. Now you're moving into the growth side and the management and all of that really important stuff with really a very fast growth practice that is growing by acquisition. So you had a front row seat to all of that, didn't you, Bianna? And you were actually playing a very active role in terms of helping that business reach its targets. And that was, of course, when we met, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing opportunity to work with wonderful people, to be exposed to how to build a business from scratch, how to add, merger and acquisitions of dental practice within the current structure. And Jane, when you start a business and it's very small, you have many hats. So,
Yeah.
you don't have a marketing director, you don't have the finance department or the HR department. So that gave me a very good exposure to
Yeah.
different aspects of the business until the business really got to a point that had the revenue to be able to support all of those departments, if you like.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I think that is one of the wonderful things. And in some respects, I had a parallel experience. So I went from a big global agency into running a relatively small brand identity business. A lot of people, who are already familiar with me know about this, but it grew from 1 to 6 million. Basically, I was kind of running the business while we were on that growth trajectory in under 2 years. So I think having really participated in a very fast growth small business is wonderful experience when it actually comes to working with other people who they're not necessarily just in a career professional in a big organization, but they are actually on that kind of front line of entrepreneurship. And I think that is something that, obviously you are all that experience, you're bringing that to your clients now as well, aren't you?
That is correct. That is correct. And I know the title of our podcast touches on resilience. And when I was trying to talk to my children and friends, and to ask them, what is resilience? And people have different definitions about resilience. And they say, my daughter says, it's when something doesn't work and you try again. It's like, yeah,
Okay,
that's a good
like
one.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Is all the friends are talking about is the resilience gives you the strength and the power to carry on when you don't feel like it and so on. But I was reading something the other day about resilience, and it talks about resilience being the ability and the capacity to tolerate suffering.
Ah.
I I never saw it that way.
Well, I like that because, nothing worth having comes easy, right? And if we're only willing to do what's easy, or if we're only willing to live in our comfort zone, we aren't resilient, really, are we? Because we're not being tested. We only get tested, and our resilience levels only get tested when we are doing the hard stuff, I think. So that
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
that is correct. And I think in all our stories, Jane, there there is a part there's a narrative that we follow
Yeah.
on the story. And we have two options that first of all, we need to understand that we have options and there is something that's being done to us in our story. But we can either react or we can act. Within that story, we can be the victim or we can be the agents that
Yes.
turn that story around to be able to create that value, to be able to rewrite that story. But it's really easy to say that power lines within us, but and that's what I'm doing with my clients. I am creating that space to be able to find those, to change those narratives and to find that resilience they are going to allow them to not just to react, but to actually be agents in rewriting their own story.
Yes, yes. I mean, that is so powerful, Bianna. So the name of your business, Plentiful Coaching, we talked about this a lot, didn't we? Actually choosing the name. I love the name Plentiful. It's just to me, it just really symbolizes abundance, a wonderful life. It is all about more, getting more in a way that is also very impactful in terms of what we're bringing to the world, right? So I really do love that name for your business. So what's next for you, Bianna? What's the next phase of your growth look like? Where would you like to be in, say, a year's time with your business?
I want my business to be recognized as an agent of change, as an agent of meaningful and powerful, doing a powerful contribution to the world, and to especially to the healthcare industry,
Yeah.
because there is a lot of people that have a very high call of duty, and
Mm.
they go to work every day and they need to find that motivation and inspiration. So I want my business to be a source of inspiration for people to get up every day and trying to find the best in what they do and continue to enjoy their career, continue to enjoy and find that fire, that motivation to continue to do a good service for their patients, for their clients, for their environment, for their staff as well.
Well, that is absolutely amazing. What an incredible mission. And I have to say that it has been such a pleasure to we've waited all this time, haven't we, Bianna? But I am so glad that I finally got the opportunity to interview you and bring your story to my audience. And I just wanted to thank you very much for joining us today. It really has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jane. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'll see you soon.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Jane Bayler is the Smart Connector, a London-based, passionate serial entrepreneur, brand marketer and business growth exploder who helps overlooked and undervalued consultants and sector experts generate consistent, scalable revenues through becoming the go-to choice of their dream clients. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate you liking, rating, and reviewing the podcast on the platform you've heard it on. And check out the links in the show notes if you'd like to connect with Jane or any of her guests in person. Thank you for listening and come back soon.